fellow Earthians, Astromia here. Thanks so much for tuning in and happy holidays! So as an astrobiologist, I feel like I have to address some recent news, and I actually thoroughly covered two of them in my last two videos. One of them about the strongest hints for life outside of our solar system, and is the Atlas comet an alien mothership or an alien probe? And some other recent news I've seen, like life on Mars, or scientists believe this is the real reason aliens haven't contacted us, or JWST finds life's chemical seeds. Actually, the last one isn't that bad. But the problem with most of these headlines is that they're incredibly misleading and just blatantly not true. Now, I'm just like anybody else, right? I'm rooting for not only the existence of alien life, but that we can find it and actually confirm its existence 100% without a doubt. And for anyone who's been reading news or been reading space news, it can be obvious that the public just becomes anxious and confused as to if we have found alien life. And because it's sort of like a life, no life, life, no life, you know, I'm getting worried that it's going to be like a boy cry wolf scenario, that when we actually do find alien life, nobody's going to care or nobody's going to believe you, you know, that sort of thing. So in order to really think about the search for alien life and what it means to find aliens, we should probably talk about what the search for life is, what it means, and what we're doing. So while there are theories of life in the solar system, the hunt for life today is overwhelmingly focused on exoplanets, and these are planets orbiting stars other than our sun. And one of the most efficient ways that we can observe them and study them is by the transit method. When an exoplanet passes between its star and our telescope, it blocks a tiny fraction of the star's light. But more importantly, if the planet has an atmosphere, a sliver of the starlight is filtered through that atmosphere. And this is where the magic or even madness can begin. So using instruments like the James Webb Space Telescope or JWST, we can capture this filtered light and study its spectrum. A spectrum is kind of like a barcode, and this barcode tells us which molecules are in the atmosphere of the planet that we're observing. And this works because things like water, carbon dioxide, methane, or even biosignatures have special spectral features that we can make out of this barcode. And a biosignature is anything, you know, a gas, a molecule, a structure, whose presence is best explained by life. And the challenge is that things like oxygen or methane or water, things that life depend on or produce, can also be explained or generated by plain geology. And as astronomer and planetary scientist Dr. Sarah Seeger put it, we haven't been able to find the true Earth twin yet because it's so very hard to find. It's like finding the proverbial needle in a haystack. And unfortunately, our reliance on distant atmospheric data, like I just described, is our biggest technological limitation. I actually interviewed Dr. Frances Westall for the Tardigrade, and she's a deep time geobiologist, and she looks at 3.5 billion year old microfossils here on Earth. And the beauty about that is she can spend, and she did spend, 25 years using multiple instruments, micro-Raman, electron microscopy, just to prove whether or not a structure is a biosignature or not. But the thing is, she has that sample in her hand and she's allowed to study it as much as she wants to get the answer she needs. But here's the thing, we do not have a sample in hand for an exoplanet. That would be amazing. So the data that we receive from an exoplanet are integrated. That means we get one single blended signal from the terminator region, and this is the sliver of the atmosphere between the day and night sides, thousands of light years away, most likely affected by nearby starlight and everything in between by the time that light from the exoplanet's atmosphere reaches us. So when we think about the news and we see things like strongest hints for life on an exoplanet, we are arguing over the tiniest wiggles in a spectral line, the barcode, that might represent a few parts per million of a certain gas. Okay, that's so tiny. If we were to find a biosignature on an exoplanet's atmosphere, this biosignature is a hint of what is actually on the planet, which we'll likely never be able to confirm by direct sampling, or at least not in our lifetime, just given how far away these exoplanets are, unless someone, invents, what are those things? Jumps? Warp? Oh my god, I'm being such a bad nerdy scientist right now. I forgot what they're called, but those ships in Star Wars or Star Trek. It might come to me later. Anyway, Dr. Jane Birkby, who is a professor of astrophysics at the University of Oxford, she said something that perfectly captures the difficulty of this measurement. And she says, it's the equivalent of trying to take a photograph of a firefly next to a beam of a lighthouse standing on a ship 20 kilometers away. And that's not even an exaggeration. In fact, that's probably on the more optimistic side. And this is why planetary atmospheric expert Dr. Sarah Ruheimer says we need to stop focusing on one singular smoking gun gas or signature, but instead think about combinations of gases or combinations of signatures that could tell us whether or not that is life on a planet. Great. Now, this brings us to the core of the headline hype, the false positive problem. Every time we see a potentially interesting molecule, we have to rule out all the ways that it can be produced abiotically or produced not by life. This includes geology, photochemistry, or even space weather, basically solar flares from our sun or from another star. And I bring this up because these high energy radiation flares can drive photochemical reactions in a planet's atmosphere, creating or destroying molecules in a way that could mimic biosignatures. So I digress a little bit, but let's consider the recent excitement over the potential biosignature of dimethyl sulfide and dimethyl disulfide on a candidate Haitian world. And again, the idea of a Haitian world is still hypothetical. All of this is based on hypothetical. And while DMS is produced by ocean phytoplankton on Earth, there's been a couple of scientists proving that there are abiotic sources of this biosignature molecule. And I want to read this quote by Dr. Mark Nevu, who is an astrobiologist and assistant research scientist at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. And he says, it really puts a lot of burden of proof that you found life on understanding the context of what your environment looks like and what abiotic processes that don't involve life are at play. And actually, Dr. Nevu and his research team developed the ladder of life detection. And this is a description directly from the group. So this framework helps scientists build a chain of evidence to confirm a potential observation of life. Features on the rungs ascend from weakly bottom to strongly top, suggesting a living organism has been observed. Scientists would need to find features from multiple, but not all rungs to claim that life has been found. And actually, Dr. Francis Westphal, who I mentioned earlier, supports this ladder. Furthermore, we must also consider the false negative problem. And biologist and geochemist Dr. Sarah Stewart Johnson said that scientists can't reliably say that ET life should look chemically like Earth life. Seeking those signatures could mean we miss beings that might be staring us in the face. If alien life produces entirely novel gases or doesn't use a global atmosphere for its waste products or anything in between, we will completely miss it. Have we completely missed it already? That's a question that I love to think about. But this ambiguity, this uncertainty is not a flaw. this is something that we have to remember, right? It's just how science works. You just take your evidence and you look at what it can tell you. But of course, all of this rests on prior knowledge and just the fact that all scientists have bias. Organic geochemist and astrobiologist from NASA, Heather Graham, says, up until now, the way we've searched for life off of our planet has been focused on features that we know have in common with all organisms on Earth. Scientific responsibility is what creates the life, no life, life scenario. And what's sad is that the initial detection is the life headline, putting it all over the news, being like, we found life, we found life. And the subsequent, more rigorous work proving that it's not actually life rarely makes the front page. I mean, it's not front page news, but it's just the truth. And Dr. Chris Lintott, astrophysicist and broadcaster, says, this means obviously that one can't exaggerate the significance of a result. But it also means that if one knows that the expert audience addressed by a paper will have broad questions, those need to be in the release too. I'm reminded of the late, great Tom Radford's rule that science journalists should, if an issue is tangled like a plate of spaghetti, regard the story as just one strand of spaghetti carefully drawn from the whole. Ideally, with the oil and garlic and tomato sauce adhering to it, it should be the responsibility of the press release to point to the existence of the whole plate of pasta, not only present a single delicious piece ready for consumption, even if that's uncomfortable for the institution or scientist involved. And finally, with all of this in mind, will it get easier to find life? Will it be easier to find life? Will we overcome sort of these technological limitations? Will we overcome this boy cry wolf scenario? I think the short answer, and it's consistently put forward by experts, is no. So when astronomers talk about JWST, things are said along the lines of the real good stuff will come from future telescopes like the Habitable Worlds Observatory or the Life Telescope. And when will that come online? 20, 30, 40 years or so from now. But in reality, no one really knows what capabilities these telescopes will have because designs are so preliminary. And we don't know if funding will continue until its launch. We don't know what might happen from now till then. I mean, just look at things like the US government shutdown or the fact that NASA got so defunded. And the goal for a space telescope to observe exoplanets and try to look for life is to include infrared, optical, and ultraviolet light, and other important things like making sure it has a coronagraph, which will be able to block out any other nearby star's light so we can try to get a more pure signal from the planet. But that's the thing, everyone involved is acutely aware that JWST was designed before scientists even knew the questions they'd want to answer about exoplanets today. So who knows what questions will arise by the time Habitable Worlds or the Life Telescope is up in space. But even if we figure this out anyway, even if all of the metaphorical stars align, Habitable Worlds isn't going to bring us certainty either, and it's likely that nothing ever will. Eddie Schwederman, an associate professor of astrobiology, says we have to be somewhat comfortable with ambiguity. The first indication we get that a planet may have life is not going to be a certain one. It's not going to be, we point a telescope at a planet, slam dunk, there's life on it. He says that he foresees years of debate and investigation and every possible explanation for what we've seen other than its life. And he says that that's just the scientific method, and that's great. And we're talking about a civilizational goal here. We want to be sure that we're right, and we have to have patience. So the search for life won't get easier, but it will get more complex. Technology will improve, but the standards for proof will also rise as technology rises as well, because the cost of being wrong is just too high. So we have so little data, so many questions. Dr. Sophia Seik, a technosignature research scientist at SETI, said, "It's the challenge with astronomy. how far apart things are, how long it takes for things to happen. Astrobiology grounds us in the familiar and makes the incomprehensible more concrete. So yeah, I know that's probably not the answer you were hoping for or looking for, but hang in there. Like Schwederman says, we just have to have patience. And the search for life is always going to be incredibly interesting, incredibly thrilling, always progressing. It's exciting times, that's for sure. It's definitely an exciting period of time to be alive in, and just to see all of these incredible debates and progression is amazing. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, do feel free to leave them down below. But I wish all of you happy holidays, and I'll see you all in the new year. Yay!